Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Early in Baldur's Gate 3's development, Larian Studios announced the game would have origin characters, or rather, characters with a prepackaged history and personality as opposed to a blank slate. This was met with a mixed response, partially because many people found the characters dislikable, but just as importantly, many RPG fans do not like using origin characters and believe Larian's focus on them harms the experience of players who prefer their characters to have a blank slate. We have had this very discussion on the channel Discord, and it seems my community is split right down the middle on whether or not origin characters are a good thing. Yesterday, during the panel from Hell, Larian announced a new origin option called the Dark Urge, and it seems like it's been specifically constructed to answer many of the criticisms they had received about origin characters. But does it succeed in doing that? I want to unpack this conversation because I am curious about the perspective other people have. If Baldur's Gate 3 has the massive launch and staying power most of us are expecting, then it could potentially become very influential and result in more RPGs adopting this style of storytelling, especially considering the success of Divinity Original Sin 2, Larian Studios' previous game, which also lets you use prepackaged characters. We'll start this discussion by laying out how the manner in which Larian Studios approaches origin characters differs from other RPGs. Then we'll walk through what I see as the pros and cons of this storytelling method. After that, we'll comb through the details Larian has announced regarding the Dark Urge and determine what issues this option successfully addresses. Finally, I'll leave you with my own personal thoughts. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below, and there are chapters for this video if you want to skip around. Alright, so let's kick this off by explaining why Larian's approach is so unique by comparing it to a couple of other games. In Dragon Age Origins, you are able to choose from a list of different origins which decide your race and how your game will begin. This origin story helps explain some of your motivations and where you fit in the lore of the game world. All other aspects of the character are completely blank. You have no voice. You are given a name, but almost nobody uses it. And outside of changing your race, you can freely customize your character's features. The origin character you choose becomes the one that is central to the main story. All other origin characters die off or essentially become irrelevant. Another type of origin character is Geralt from the Witcher series. You don't get to select a background and history because he only has one, and it's filled with details that are widely known and referenced by the game's characters. You have a voice, you have a name that you hear constantly, and you must play a human, or in his case, a mutant. Your only facial customization options are changing his haircut. You have some flexibility regarding his dialogue options, but no matter what, that dry wit and I don't really want to be bothered personality is going to shine through. Larian Studios took what those previous games have done and cranked it up several notches by providing multiple origin characters. So like Witcher, you choose a character that has a name, a voice, and consistent features. However, like Dragon Age Origins, you could choose from multiple origin options. So in the case of Divinity Original Sin 2, there were 6 different origins to choose from. Unlike Dragon Age, choosing one origin doesn't cause the characters in the other origins to die. Instead, they are available as party members, and all of them continue to be active in the story. It's also very possible for origin characters to turn against you, causing you to fight someone that you were playing as in another playthrough. Alright, now that you have an idea of what Larian's origin character system is and why it's so unique, let's talk about the pros and cons of this approach. The main advantage comes down to one word you are going to hear a lot in this video: reactivity. When developers put their focus on origin characters, it is significantly easier for them to craft a world that reacts to who you are. In the Witcher series, everywhere you go, people greet you by your name and bring up things that your character has done in the past. Sometimes the player doesn't already know Geralt has done these things, and they are learning about it in real time. So part of the joy of playing an origin character is that the game reveals details about their history and who these people were before you gain control of them. That information helps you figure out what kind of person you want them to be now. Speaking of which, another thing that really makes playing an origin character entertaining is that you can decide to make them act completely differently than they did before you gained control. My favorite origin option in Divinity Original Sin 2 is the Red Prince. He's known as a tyrant, a slaver, a despot, someone who cavorts with demons, and just about any other negative, horrible thing you can say about a person. Other characters in the world know this about him and know the violent history of his race. I have the freedom to roleplay him as someone who is kind, giving, and wants peace for all. Some other NPCs in the world react to this and remark upon how much he appears to have changed or how different he is from other lizards they have met. That kind of reactivity is deeply satisfying for the player. The last positive I want to note is because you have an entire history that has been laid out, it frees the developers to determine what relationships you already have. My first Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough will be as Will for this exact reason. He is part of a noble family from Baldur's Gate, so I'm really excited to see how that dynamic plays out and how much of a celebrity he is within the city. He's also on a mission to kill one of the other origin characters, and I want to see how that changes my dialogue with her. Both of these aspects of this character make a potential playthrough exciting, but it would be much more difficult to accomplish if Will was a completely blank slate. Of course, there are also some strong disadvantages to using origin characters as well. First and foremost, it forces the player to use a character they have not designed. I find this limitation is especially egregious to gamers who regularly play tabletop games. They compare it to sitting down at a D&D table and having the dungeon master tell them who their character is and how they should roleplay. It instantly damages their ability to enjoy the game. On a similar note, the player might strongly disagree with the design choices the developer has made for the origin character. I experienced this while playing Pentiment, a game that gives you control over the dialogue options of the character you play, but also has long time jumps where your character makes decisions without you. I learned about things my character had done during those time jumps, and the decisions were so strongly contrary to my vision of the character that it basically ruined my ability to enjoy the game. Both of those are disadvantages that any game using an origin character has to consider. There are also potential pitfalls that apply specifically to how Larian Studios handles this feature. The first problem is having multiple origin characters who all live within the story can make your main character feel unimportant. In Baldur's Gate 3, there are multiple origin characters you can choose from. All of them have tadpoles in their heads, and all of them can potentially survive the prologue. That means, at least on some level, they are all heroes of their own story. And even if your character died, the rest of them will continue on and figure out how to set things right. So the question becomes, if your character is technically not critical to the story, does that damage your ability to enjoy it? Remember, in Dragon Age Origins, once you pick an origin character, all the other possible origin characters either die or become irrelevant. None of them gain significant renown, and certainly none of them are party members. In games like Mass Effect or The Witcher, there's only one origin character option, so they don't have this issue either. The other unique major issue relates to a consistent criticism of Divinity Original Sin 2. If you decided to create a custom character instead of using one of the origin options, you basically got screwed. There's a ton of reactivity throughout the game if you choose to play as the Red Prince, Thane, or any of the other origin selections. If you create your own character from scratch, there is very little reactivity in the game that rewards this decision. So essentially, it feels like a shell of what you experience with an origin character. This has come up as a point of discussion repeatedly regarding Baldur's Gate 3. Circling back to Will, he's a warlock who is on a quest to find his patron. Larian confirmed early in the game's development that Will can interact directly with his patron at some point during the story. Many people were concerned that if you play as a custom warlock, you won't be able to interact with your patron in the same way, and instead you'll just get access to the base story content. During the panel yesterday, Larian confirmed this will not be the case, and custom-made warlocks can in fact call upon their patron for guidance, but but you get the idea. Players are concerned that their blank slate characters won't experience a game world that's nearly as reactive to who they are compared to Origin options. Alright, now that you are armed with proper context, let's talk about what Larian has done to address player concern. Yesterday, they introduced the final Origin character, the Dark Urge. Picking this Origin allows you to play as any gender, race, or class, and it doesn't provide you with any type of backstory. So essentially, it lets you have an origin while at the same time retaining almost complete control over your character. The difference between this character and the other Origin options is that you feel a near constant urge to commit violent acts. During the panel, an example of this was shown where upon your initial meeting with Gale, he reaches a hand out from a portal and asks you to help him. The Dark Urge has an option to fall into a murderous haze and bite Gale's hand off in front of your other party members. Larian specifically mentioned that all characters have the option to be consistently violent, but the Dark Urge kicks things up several levels, and this Origin will give you options that the other characters do not have. If you give in to these temptations, then you will gain more power, but it's also possible you will end the game completely alone. Also, as time passes, it will become more and more difficult to resist your murderous temptations. Speaking of which, like all other Origins, you have the ability to resist these urges or give in to them. So you can absolutely play the Dark Urge as someone who is wholly benevolent and peaceful. Okay, so with all that being said, let's get into my thoughts. Those of you who have been following the channel know I absolutely love playing evil characters and appreciate it when developers put effort into making an evil playthrough enjoyable. The footage they showed of some of the evil acts you can do look bananas. Honestly, looking at what they did with the Dark Urge has convinced me to do another Let's Play on the channel. We used to do them regularly, but I stopped because they were time intensive for little gain, but the idea of spending hours voice acting a murderous dragonborn who is potentially a ball spawn appeals to me a great deal. The Dark Urge is also a really impressive way for Larian Studios to satisfy a wider variety of players. You would be shocked at the amount of people who played DOS 2 and never picked an Origin option. There's a ton of them out there, and I think this ability to create a blank slate while still gaining reactivity from the world is super cool. But let's circle back to the original question. Does the Dark Urge solve Larian's Origin character problem? My answer is it does, but only halfway. You get a character whose class, race, and backstory is all decided by you, while at the same time getting the level of reactivity typically reserved for an Origin character. So from that standpoint, this is a much better option than what was available in DOS 2. On the other hand, the narrative issue with how Larian handles Origin characters isn't addressed by the Dark Urge. At the end of the day, your character isn't special compared to the other Origins and technically isn't necessary to the story. Personally, that doesn't bother me, but I find it weird that Larian is so comfortable with this issue. Why do all the Origin characters in Baldur's Gate 3 get a tadpole in their head? Why not just have only the character you select get a tadpole, while the rest of them have different reasons for being on the ship? Without having played the game, this seems like a simple fix that would make the narrative much stronger for many players. Regardless, I am absolutely looking forward to this game, and I think the Dark Urge is a brilliant feature which adds even more depth to a game that was already stacked. That's all I had to say on the topic, but once again, if you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments below. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.